Now there's another set of rules here, which Paul O'Neill and Alcoa discovered, is that the imperfection someone experiences in one place may be similar to the imperfections people experience somewhere else. So Paul O'Neill comes up with a separate rule. He said, one, we have to be able to see problems as they occur. That becomes rule one. Second rule is, when we see problems, we have to have the capacity, the skill, the capability of solving those problems, not making the symptom go away, but really understand, what was it about the current, what was it about the chemistry that caused the metal to spatter like that? And he realizes, if someone can learn something over here, that's pretty good. But if they can learn it over here and teach it here, and here, and here, and here, and here, and here, one problem doesn't become one improvement, one problem can become 10 improvements. One problem become 100 improvements. One problem at Alcoa can literally become 1,000 improvements, all for the price of one. Rule number 3 at Alcoa becomes, manage your work to see problems. When you see problems, solve those problems. And when you've solved a problem, teach somebody else. And if you're in the midst of a problem, make sure you're learning from somebody else as well. That becomes rule number 3. Now, there's a fourth rule to this. And the reason I told this story about Paul O'Neill, because clearly Paul O'Neill is not solving all the problems at Alcoa. But there's a critical element of leadership here. Now, Gotti said, you know, when people first started talking about lean, they said, well, this is empowerment, this is bottoms up, this is local problem solving. And he said, it's that but, it's that and, that it's also the top-down leadership to make sure these behaviors are going on all the time. Within Alcoa, the goal is perfect safety. The means is see problems, solve problems, share what's learned. And the fourth skill here is the leadership skill of encouraging this behavior all the time. So 2 quick stories on this. I remember being in a meeting, was at Alcoa headquarters. Paul O'Neill was speaking. Now, you may have been in situations like this where if the CEO, the chairman, is speaking, everyone sits around and then the person is late. And then there's a bunch of time filling, waiting for the CEO to show up. And then when the CEO shows up, they don't actually show up. The door opens and the entourage comes in first. And they, you know, very nervous people wearing suits and ties, and they line the walls and they crowd the stage. And then the CEO walks in. The only thing missing is the Marine band playing Hail to the Chief. Then they come up here and they say, sir, all right, Alcoa's meeting. People are coming in and there's some guy standing in the front without a jacket, just wearing his shirt and tie. They sit down. There's no entourage. There's no introduction. They just, welcome to Alcoa. My name is Paul O'Neill. I noticed there are a number of strangers in the room. Let me tell you where the exits are. 2 exits over there. Let me tell you what the alarms will sound like. Let me tell you where you should meet. Now that we've got safety out of the way, now let's get on with our meeting. And the host is Boaz. All right? So that's Paul O'Neill. Within Alcoa, there were a number of people who got promoted because of their ability to teach the skills of see problems, solve problems, share what you've learned, and a number of very public examples of people who lost their jobs at very senior levels because they couldn't teach other people to see, solve, and share. Now let me just tie up the Alcoa story. Remember, the original criticism was safety is a trade-off. You're safe, but it costs. You're safe, but you don't produce. The question is, how do you get impeccable safety, near-perfect safety, with increases in productivity, increases in yield, increases in timeliness, decreases in cycle time, et cetera, et cetera? The realization at Alcoa was, you can't manage safety. You can't manage cost. You can't manage quality. What you can do is manage process. What you can do is manage system. You can manage work. And all these other things which we think we're managing, we're not. They're the result of how we manage the work we do. So there's no, if you walk into an Alcoa factory, you can't walk around and say, all right, there's got a light switch here. That controls the air conditioning. That controls, here's the safety switch. I'm going to turn safety on today. There's a safety knob. We need a little more safety, like controlling the heat. It's hot in here, let's turn it cooler. It's dangerous, let's make it more safe. You can't do that. What you can do is affect how work is done. Now the thing is, if you're not safe, not perfectly safe, the reason you're not safe is because you don't have perfect knowledge of the process. So if you see risk, you see ignorance about the process. If you solve for risk, you create knowledge. And if you create knowledge, that knowledge flows through not just as safety, that knowledge flows through as quality, it flows through as productivity, it flows through as responsiveness, it flows through as product variety, it flows through as all these good things. How does Alcoa get there? It's the dynamic of learning, the dynamic of improvement, the dynamic of innovation. Whatever you've designed is broken. You didn't get the right answer. You didn't get the A+ on the first try. However, just because you got imperfect, you didn't get the A+ on the first try, you can learn your way to perfection. How do you learn your way to perfection? See where you don't know, see where you're broken, see where you're falling down. Try a different approach. Try again a different approach. Try a third time a different approach. And when your third approach, your fourth approach, your 100th approach works, teach somebody else. And if somebody else has already learned, learn from them. And if you're leading an organization, one of your primary responsibilities is making sure these behaviors go on all the time. As I said when I started, greatness is possible. It's possible across the board. We started with Ford with product design and manufacturing, Toyota manufacturing, Alcoa a very different type of manufacturing. And let me just end with a compressed version. If you think about all the products and all the services we use, and you say, what is possibly the best new product introduction in the history, at least the recent history of mankind? It's not a commercial product. In 1948, the United States Navy had this great idea. Submarines, nice weapon system, but very ineffective. They can cruise around 3-4 days, then they need fuel. They can stay submerged a few minutes, 20 miles, then they have to pop up. Very disruptive to sea lane traffic, but very vulnerable. However, if you get to keep a submarine underwater all the time, where it's really quite a nice weapon system. Same thing with aircraft carriers. Great to be able to have a floating air base. The problem is they run out of fuel. When they run out of fuel, you have to bring them back and give them fuel. And if they run out of fuel, they're very vulnerable. Wouldn't it be great if you had an aircraft carrier which could go wherever it had to be and stay there forever? The only possibility in 1948 for forever was nuclear power, but it didn't exist. So in 1948, the Navy has this great idea of nuclear propulsion on board warships. 1954, 6 years later, they launched the USS Nautilus. The USS Nautilus becomes the first nuclear-powered warship in the world. It doesn't go underwater just for 20 miles. It goes under the polar ice cap before global warming. I mean, it was big then. Now with flippers and a scuba tank you get under. All right? So it goes under the polar ice cap. When a second one is built, they rendezvous under the polar ice cap. Very difficult to do. The sister ship goes down, goes 24,000. Remember, the standard was 20 miles submerged. 24,000 miles comes back up. So you say, well, that's pretty incredible. But the work of the nuclear navy is very dangerous. Nuclear reactors on board warships, which are sunk, right? That's the job of a submarine. Get a sink. With nuclear weapons on board, no windows, driven by an 18-year-old boy. Right, now again, just to give you a sense of the risk, tonight, go home, find the local teenager, blindfold him, put him in your car, and drive around, go to the supermarket. That's what you do every day in the U.S. nuclear Navy. Since 1954, several hundred ships have had nuclear reactors. There have been 10, now the 11th model of nuclear reactor. Thousands and thousands of reactor time, millions of miles steamed under nuclear power. The injury rate in the nuclear Navy due to reactor failure is 0. 0. Not a single person has been injured. Not a single person has been killed. There's been 0 environmental contamination due to reactor failure on a U.S. nuclear-powered warship. Now, just to give you a sense of comparison, the Soviet Navy lost submarines left and right. The topic of many a movie is the Soviet Navy's nuclear power submarine catching fire, sinking, and causing catastrophe. The U.S. NASA program, manned missions in hostile environments, Apollo 1 lost that crew, lost the crew of Challenger, lost the crew of Columbia. We're talking about 150 launches, 3 crews. That's a very poor odds. The Navy, perfect safety. How does the Navy get to perfect safety? Exactly how Alcoa got to perfect safety, and is exactly how Toyota discovered its way from lousy car maker to perfect. From 1948 on, the man who ran the U.S. Navy program, Admiral Rickover, Hyman Rickover, insisted that the people who worked for him were idiots, insisted that the people who worked for him were morons, insisted that the people who worked for him were fools. And you think, oh my gosh, how could that be? Well, here's what it meant to be an idiot in the mind of Admiral Rickover. It couldn't possibly be that you didn't know the right answer, because in 1948, no one knew the right answer about nuclear power. The science hadn't been discovered, the technology hadn't been invented, the materials hadn't been developed, the processes for those materials hadn't been created, and the people hadn't been trained. No one knew how to do perfection. In the mind and the behavior of Admiral Rickover, what it meant to be an idiot was not that you didn't know, but that you didn't learn. And there are many, many stories that grow out of the Navy experience where the job of someone wasn't to get the right answer. The job was to see the problem quickly, to solve the problem with great rigor and great discipline, to share what was learned, and as people advanced in rank, to teach these skills to other people. If we had more time, we could come up with more examples. We don't have time, but we come up with more examples, and this is what it comes down to. We could talk about Alcoa, we could talk about Toyota, we could talk about product design, we could talk about manufacturing, we could talk about manufacturing and production, we could talk about services, high-tech, low-tech, heavy industry, civilian, commercial, we could talk about commercial, we could talk about military, we could talk about public sector. Doesn't matter where we have the conversation. Anytime we see an organization which has twice the quality, twice the productivity, 10 times the yield, 1/10 the lead time, we're going to find an organization which has been able to outlearn, out-improve, out-innovate, out-discover its competition. And when we start looking at what they do differently, our first pass will be the technology looks a little different. The processes look a little different. The science looks a little different. But when we look a little further, we'll see the behavior is fundamentally different. Because in most organizations, the assumption is you can think your way through to the right answer. And when you don't get the right answer, you say, well, what we do is very difficult. No one has the right answer. That's one set of behaviors. The behavior in the nuclear Navy, the behavior within Toyota, Southwest Airlines, Toyota, Alcoa, on and on is, we can't get the right answer. We can't think our way to the right answer. However, we can discover our way to the right answer. And the way to discover our way to the right answer is see where we have the wrong answer, see problems immediately, solve those problems so we understand better what the right answer looks like, share what the right answer is, and make sure this never stops. And if we make sure it never stops, we can actually pursue perfection and sometimes achieve it. Thank you.